This is me using Black Swan's insane Arcana ability to stack the DOT to just shy of the maximum cap. For normal players, this is amazing because it means I've unlocked a way for you to get almost 100,000 damage from a single DOT explosion. But for my hardcore players, this means absolutely nothing when you can clear almost any MOC in a single cycle. Henshin a go-go, baby. What's good, guys? Yoku here, and that's just one of the phenomenal cards I'll show you in today's video. I'll go over how to make the most out of our emotionally imbalanced queen, Black Swan, a literal crazy DPS character equipped with her own signature type of damage over time. Of course, you'll also learn how to play her to get the most damage out of Arcana, or most destructive builds, which teams take the most advantage of her new talent, and a little bonus content at the end. After nearly a year of watching Honkai Star Rail's meta develop, it feels so good to say that Black Swan is here to help carry the meta forward in a new prosperous light.
What are you afraid of?
If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're exactly like me and just so happen to love DOT or Mommy Dami Kafka. The rest of you have probably already shrugged off Black Swan as a one-dimensional type character, and fortunately, you're wrong. Black Swan can also be used as an even stronger version of Pela with more reward. However, let's break down the basic functions of her abilities first. Throughout this video, Black Swan is level 80 at E0, equipped with her signature light cone, Reforged Remembrance. Traces are maxed at 10-10-10 in order to show the full capability of her stacks. The exclusive DOT Relic set, Prisoner in Deep Confinement, while alternating between the Glamith and Pan Cosmic ornament sets. The main attraction to her kit is this, Loom of Fate's Caprice. Black Swan's talent, aka cursing enemies with Arcana, is a new type of DOT exclusive to her. Everything revolves around this, so bear with me as I do my best to explain it all in the most simple terms. Arcana deals up to 240% of Swan's attack at the start of each turn, and each single stack increases the damage multiplier by 12%. Unlike other DOTs, once an enemy gains Arcana, it never goes away, just resets back to 1. Sorta like a bad tattoo. When you manage to build the stacks up to 3, which is piss easy by the way, the damage jumps up to a whopping 420% and starts inflicting extra stacks to adjacent enemies. The next breakpoint is 7, and this is the moneymaker. 7 stacks equal current DOTs dealing damage, ignore 20% of their defense. Mind you, the maximum stack is 50. I'll explain why that's disgusting in a bit. Now you're probably asking yourself, how the hell are you going to stack up 50 Arcana before the enemy takes their turn? Unless you're in simulated universe, then I don't know, maybe. It's highly unlikely that you're ever gonna get 50 stacks in a normal game. That doesn't mean Swan doesn't do her best to help you get there though. Her basic attack deals damage to a single target while also adding 1 stack of Arcana for every single DOT type applied to them. This would be the fastest way to rack up stacks, turning Black Swan into an SP positive unit if it weren't for her first bonus ability, Viscera's Disquiet, which copies that effect of her basic attack and applies it to her skill as well. Unfortunately, you're still locked into a single target stack no matter which attack you use. But don't let me forget about her second bonus ability, Goblet's Dredges, which is critical for the rest of her DOT teammates to push stacks. This allows certain characters who have their own ability to re-trigger DOTs to then stack more Arcana up to 3 times in a single attack. Those characters at this current moment in time being Guinaifen, Luca, Sampo, and obviously Kafka. And speaking of skills, Decadence, False Twilight, is the name of hers. And not only does this skill apply Arcana stacks to multiple enemies at once, but it also reduces their defense by about 21% for 3 whole turns. In a game like Star Rail, that's basically forever. Finally, we get to her ultimate, a 2-turn debuff known as Epiphany that increases the damage taken by 25% against all enemies. Not only that, but now the Arcana stacks count as every single DOT type in the game: Burn, Bleed, Shock, and Wind Shear. That's insanely important to keep in mind once we get to the gear section. In addition to all of this, Epiphany keeps the Arcana stacks from resetting for at least 1 turn, becoming essential to how you strategically begin to play Black Swan now and in the future. Oh yeah, and the ultimate still does damage. Whose idea was this? The last of her kit is the most straightforward ability out of all, Candle Flame's Portent. Just like Ruan Mei's ability to increase the damage of the entire team's damage output based on her own break effect, Black Swan has a similar, if not the same exact ability, but for effect hit rate, and it only boosts her own damage. You honestly don't need to know the math behind any of this. All you really need to know is that get your effect hit rate to 120%, profit. I know that was a lot to take in, so to reward you for your heightened attention span, I'm going to show you how to play Black Swan, taking everything I just mentioned into account in under a minute. Step 1. Step 2, start loading the board with your most powerful buffers like Ruan Mei. Step 3, start racking up as many Arcana as you can before the enemy's turn, but keep your SP in mind. And don't use your ultimate if you get it early. If you can, which it should be, you need to break the big bads to reduce as much incoming damage as possible while building Arcana stacks. Step 5, enter phase 2 and repeat the process, but hold Swan's ult. You don't want to waste this, which means you shouldn't be popping it right before the elite's turn when they have less than 10 to 15 stacks on their head. It's best to use Swan's basic attack in this case because it still gives the same amount of stacks, which is way more important than personal damage. Step 6, after you survive the elite's attack, mass unload everything if you can break them. This will help push the enemy down far enough that you can stack as much as possible before their second turn. Then destroy them with the remaining stacks. At this point in time, you can pop your ultimate. You're using your ultimate in order to keep them delayed, stack as many as you can, let them take their turn again, but keep the stacks, and then stack even more. Massive bonus points if the enemy is weak to quantum or imaginary, and you break them using one of those elements for an insane delay. Step 7, profit. Congratulations, you just one cycled MOC with DOT, which is something a large amount of the community said wasn't possible.
What are you afraid of?
This will be the easiest question answered in your HSR life. Normally, I'd recommend some kind of two-piece messenger or the respective element, but the only set that you need to be focused on building for Black Swan is the Prisoner in Deep Confinement. The 12% attack is always wonderful for DOT characters, but the most important part of the kit is the 18% defense reduction on top. Add this into the 40% defense reduction she already has from her talent and skill, and you're already at 68% defense reduction with just Swan alone. In regards to the planar ornaments, the damage difference between them is so minuscule that it honestly comes down to which set you have the better stats for. Pan Cosmic or Frontline Glamith are your go-to options here. And by the way, let me know if you guys are still calling Pan Cosmic Pan Galactic. Shoutouts to the ones that were here before the name change. Pan Cosmic gives more immediate damage with no extra requirements, while Glamith gives more damage percent and it's way easier to farm. I would like to make a mention of using Glamith with Mei in particular. You don't actually need to hit the 160 speed to trigger Glamith's max damage. Thanks to Mei's always active passive, you only need to reach 150 and then she'll take care of the rest. For light cones, Moon and I managed to test out the best options both in-game and through simulations to figure out the best results for when and what situations. Reforged Remembrance is her absolute best light cone for both personal damage and DOT team assistance. A naturally free 40% effect hit rate to reduce the amount of substats you need to hunt for in her relics. Helps to free up the other desired stats like speed and attack. Now, do you remember what I mentioned earlier about how her ultimate's ability was important? With her signature light cone, using one ultimate grants you a 20% attack bonus as well as another 29% defense reduction for DOTs against enemies thanks to the profit stacks equipped on this light cone. That brings the 68% from earlier to an insane 97%. Black Swan is the first character to practically achieve 100% defense reduction in the game, otherwise known as true damage. Do you know how big that is? Next up is an S5 copy of Eyes of the Prey. Just like her signature light cone, an S5 copy of Eyes is going to give you that extra 40% effect hit rate for free. Instead of the defense reduction and attack bonus, you'll gain just under 50% increased DOT damage, which is still pretty good. This applies directly to her wind shears, which in battle means that those giant sacramental pops are influenced too. There's nothing too crazy about this option though. It's solid if you have it. After that is going to be Showtime, or rather it's Showtime. The newest entry into the Nihility path comes in right after Eyes of the Prey with its own unique ability. At S5, which you can get for free from the MOC shop as long as you play MOC, this thing has stacks called Trick, which increase the damage dealt by 10% per stack. Now the stacks only last for one turn, but because of the way this ability works and the way that turns work, the uptime is nearly 100%. The obvious thing missing from this light cone though is the 40% effect hit rate, and while that definitely sucks, they at least try to make up for it by granting you an attack increase of 36% when your EHR is 80% or higher, which it should be. Lastly is going to be before the tutorial mission starts, which technically fills a very niche but powerful role. This, at the current point in time, is the only light cone that will allow Black Swan to achieve a 3-turn ultimate by herself consistently, thanks to the 8 energy she gets from attacking defense reduced enemies, which again happens all the time. It also just so happens to give you that free 40% effect hit rate we were asking for earlier. The trade-off and the main attribute lacking from this light cone is damage. So it becomes more apparent that you need to be aware what strategies you're running with your team and why. Unfortunately, if you're a new player, you actually don't have access to this light cone. Like at all. I mean that. It was an event during Silverwolf's initial banner where they gave us the light cone up to S5 for free, and we have no idea when or if this cone is even making a return. This is kind of why I gave you guys 4 weapon options to choose from.
What are you afraid of?
Phew! Finally, we made it to the team section. I know, guys, it's been a long ride so far, but if you can't tell, there's a lot to absorb and digest about Black Swan. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'll make a couple of brief statements first. Number 1, I am not doing anything Hypercarry when it comes to Black Swan. Yes, you can force Hypercarry, we all know this, but ideally, running Hypercarry Black Swan is going against how she wants to operate both as a character by herself as well as a character on the team. The general game plan that you should be forming around Black Swan is abusing the Arcana stacks and getting them up as much as possible. The main way that you're going to be doing this is adding all of the different DOTs onto your team. At the moment, we don't have any type of abundance or preservation character that's applying DOTs consistently, and we don't have any harmony characters doing that either. So your only options are the Nihility characters provided outside of Himiko and Hook, who also have the ability to burn enemies. Oh yeah, and Serval. All of that in mind, I can break down Black Swan team comps into basically 2 different types. First and obvious from the Persona fanatic is going to be Ruanmei, Kafka, Black Swan, Popo, or Locha. Honestly, any sustain works here, whatever you have and whatever you feel comfortable using, but I found multiple reasons as to why I would want to use Popo or Locha on the team. Now, this team in particular should be her most common team. Mei gives a substantial amount of damage buffs to both of them, but learning how to take the most advantage of Mei's break delay is key with this particular team. Abusing the small moments in between the break delay is imperative, and one of the most common ways you will be able to stack Arcana uninterrupted. If you can master the timing and speed tuning of this team strategically, you can reach 50 stacks. My personal best was 38, and then Japart died. Kafka is Kafka. One of them needs to be fast as heck. Faster Kafka equals more detonations, faster Swan equals more Arcana stack explosions. Something that is interesting though is the new Pioneer Diver of Dead Waters Relics set, which is really fun to explore a Kritka build with thanks to all the defense reduction Swan and Mei are already doing. Now for Huohuo, Huohuo allows you to get as close to a 0 cycle as possible thanks to the energy she is providing with the team when you need it. This makes up for the fact that Black Swan only has a 4-turn ultimate outside of using tutorial, and by using Huohuo you can actually circumvent that, keep your most damaging light cone, and still apply all the damage with your ultimate on top of that. She is a little SP hungry though, which requires you to play an SP neutral or SP positive rotation with Black Swan. Now in Locha's case, Locha allows Black Swan to play an SP negative style and adds that imaginary break shenanigan stuff that I was talking about earlier. Imprisonment breaks become huge for stacking Arcana, just like I showed you. And when you mix this in with Ruanmei's delay, on top of everybody else just constantly doing damage with faster Kafkas or faster Black Swans, you can easily reach 50 Arcana stacks in a much more prolonged battle. Now, if you're brave enough, you can forego sustain entirely for a 3rd DOT unit like I did here. In the digital world, this is Swan's most damaging access. In the future, I'm sure this will change once we get sustained or harmony characters that have DOT primarily included in their kit. Next up, and don't you fret guys, because I know someone's gonna ask it, we have a team without Kafka. So many of you were asking me, what about Swan with no Kafka? What do I do with Swan? And I don't have Kafka. I don't want to pull a Kafka, but I want Swan. What do I do? So I experimented. Ruanmei, Black Swan, Tingyu, and Huohuo, which basically is a hypercarry formation, but you could easily replace Tingyu with another DOT character. I'm going to explain both of these for the different reasons that I have them. In Ting Yun's case, it's very straightforward. Ting Yun and Huo Huo are going to help Black Swan keep her ultimate on a 2-turn rotation, which in turn makes it so that Epiphany is permanent. This turns Black Swan into the only stacker on the team, whereas normally you would have another DOT unit helping Black Swan stack up these stacks and getting a lot as often as possible. Black Swan becomes the only one being able to do that. The reason I don't like this is because if Black Swan goes down, all your damage is gone. No more DOTs, no more pops, no more wind shears, and neither of the other 3 characters are doing any amounts of damage on their own. Now, if we replace Ting Yun with someone like Guinaifen or Sampo or even Luca, without Kafka, you're missing an incredible amount of front-loaded damage. That being said, it doesn't mean you're SOL. Characters like Guinaifen or Sampo can help with this by replacing Kafka on your team. One of them needs to be turned into a crit monster to make up for what's missing from Kafka and her abilities, and then at that point you're kind of missing out on having massive break units on the team, but I won't get into hybrid builds right now. Timing your ultimates to match up with Swan's Epiphany is so much more critical now than it was before because of the lack of front-loaded DOT coming from Kafka. In the event you do not have Ru on Mei and you replace her with anyone else, I guess in this case Ting Yun, not having Mei on this team is the worst version of it. I would not recommend it at all, but I understand everyone has different situations.
What are you afraid of?
But that's it. Black Swan disappointed me at first because of the lack of front-loaded damage on her end, but the more I experimented with her, the more comfortable I became. Boasting the fact that she's the only character in the game with nearly 100% total defense reduction on the board, while also blowing up that exact same board with DOT stronger than even Kafka's, is something I couldn't pass up. Even better for me is the fact I have a cracked out Kafka in Mei. But what about you? Does Black Swan live up to your expectations, or do you need a little more convincing? If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts and opinions over Black Swan and tell me how those pulls went. I'm probably live on Twitch doing my own pulls right now, or I'm playing Persona 3. Regardless, I can't say my user outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. However, if you want to see more content regarding Black Swan, check out one of these videos here. Smell you later.